Hey, what's up guys? My name is Moda and welcome back to the Mining Stacker YouTube channel. Today's video, we do have official word of the first Radiant ASIC. It's going to be a dual mining ASIC, which is extremely weird. This is the entity that we've been speculating on. It is the DragonBall miner A11. We do have full specs, we have prices, shipping windows, the whole thing. We're going to give our quick thoughts and opinions on it. So we're going to try to make this a quick one because I am kind of the last one here. So we'll talk about it and give just our overall thoughts, okay? So if that sounds good, guys, stay tuned. Let's get to this thing. So we're going to get right to it. We ain't going to waste any time. Before we even talk about the ASIC, we'll talk about Radiant. You guys kind of know my thoughts and opinions on it. I'm not a fan of the choices they made. I'm not a fan of how they handled the whole situation. But don't let my personal opinion of it dissuade you from anything, okay? In reality, that's more just of a personal opinion. As far as in terms of potential here, it's still there and arguably even better. Reason I'm saying that is they just pretty much survived one of the more worst case scenarios with the transition to ASICs, and that's surviving somebody kind of taking over the network as they did, and for this extended amount of time, right? It's been like going on 5 months now. Okay, so the worst part is arguably over. These ASICs are coming out, which is also going to what? Get the interest of these other manufacturers in if they weren't already developing these things. So expect gold shells, ice rivers, all this other nonsense for these guys to jump in eventually, right? Will they come now? Who knows when they'll come, but we know that they're going to come, right? This is the end goal for Radiant. So still a tiny market cap, right? Market cap is under 12 million, 894. So a lot of potential upside still here, right? So it's dependent on you on what you think of them. For me, again, I have my personal opinion of it. It's just not going to be a long-term hold for me. But like I mentioned, that doesn't mean there still is good potential here. Again, it's such a tiny market cap, good community, doesn't need a whole lot for it to do a 10, 15, 20, potentially even higher X. Okay, especially if it does gain real traction, and even if it just cracks the top 300-400 in the bull market, a lot of potential upside, and even more so obviously if it does even better than that, right? It's still extremely early. Great community that again survived one of the harshest things there is to survive, because on top of that, all the sentiment, right? We all gave our thoughts and opinions on it, and they went right through all of that, right? So kudos to them for hanging on and doing their thing and just continuing on, right? So in terms of Radiant, still a lot of upside. Now, in terms of the ASIC itself, I have seen a lot of commentary on, not even regarding the specs of it, just regarding DragonBall themselves, right? There's a lot of commentary, like morally, ethically, there's no way I could support this. If that's your sole reason for not buying this thing, it's kind of a silly reason. In reality, all these manufacturers, regardless of who it is, are all dirty as hell, money hungry as hell. Okay, that is their only focus. It's not about the consumer. It's about selling the damn things, right? So the only difference here is that they kind of broke like a gentleman's agreement between the manufacturers. They all kind of have this thing where at least none of the major manufacturers have done it this blatantly, I guess you could say. Ice River, Gold Shell, Bitmain, that's the reason we weren't saying we didn't think it was going to be them, because they've never done it to this extent, right? Which was kind of surprising in a way, because in reality, that was one of the reasons initially when the ice rivers were announced, I was 100% convinced that there was no way those things were going to come out, because it made no sense for them to sell those miners when they could just self-mine and make a whole shit ton of money, right? When we saw the profitability on like the KS1, the KS2, in my head, I was like, bro, like, why would they sell this thing when they can literally stack millions and millions of coins? But they did decide to sell. They did self-mine, right? We did see that. We did follow those wallets, but not to this extent like what DragonBall did, right? So they did it kind of to an extreme, but again, in reality, I'm kind of surprised none of the others have done that also, right? Because at the end of the day, they saw an opportunity to make money, and they just made that money, okay? The difference is the way that Radiant handled it and what they did about it. I'm just not a fan of how they let them kind of take over, right? So again, to each their own, but morally, ethically, that would not be a reason that would dissuade me from buying them. Is that a scummy move? Sure, but did they take down the network or do anything like that though? At the same time, no. They just took advantage of an opportunity. Okay, so for me, that wouldn't be a reason to not buy it. So now getting into the specs. So this is going to dual mine. This to me is the weirdest thing out of the whole situation though, right? What, wow, how, like weird, right? So as far as how they're doing it, my personal guess, the easiest is most likely, again, the configuration. Looks like your typical ASIC with 3 hash boards. Most likely 2 of them are Radiant, 1 is Alephium. Okay, is it chips that can, you know, do both things? No, right? We know with ASICs, they're application specific integrated circuits, meaning they're like programmed at the chip level, they can't be reprogrammed. Okay, so if they are ASICs, the simplest answer is that there's RXD chips, there's Alephium chips. How they're doing it is going to be 2 control boards. Is that 1 control board doing dual function? We don't really know the extent of that. Reality kind of doesn't matter, but if these specs do come to fruition, that's just going to be my personal guess. 1 Alephium hash board, 2 RXD hash boards, right? So interesting concept. Kind of seems weird. Kind of seems like, I don't know what to make of it actually, because it would make more sense for them to just release 2 miners. They would be able to double their money essentially. They'd be able to sell that Alephium ASIC for a couple thousand, and this one probably still at the same overpriced price, right? So kind of a weird choice because, again, the Alephium hash rate is so low. It's the equivalent of 3 AL0s, which is about $10 a day currently. So it's not even making that much of an increase in the profitability, but maybe they were working on it, and maybe they're just trying to rush this thing out, and they found a way to just put those in there. Maybe manufacturing is the issue for them. They're just trying to make as many because this initial batch appears to only be a couple hundred units. Okay, so maybe that could have something to do with it. In terms of the specs, to me, it seems very underpowered. It's my guess is that it's going to be very old chips. It's very on the old node, maybe like not even 5 nanometer, probably 8 nanometer or older. So to me, right off the rip, just basing it off of that, that's not appealing for me because, again, for me, latest and greatest or nothing, right? It seems extremely likely that as the other manufacturers come in, they're probably going to demolish this thing, right? So in reality, the value prop here, though, if you're going to degen or roll the dice on this one, you're essentially betting on how much time you have before the other ASICs come on board, right? Because currently, they're the only one. They're going to be running the entire network. So everybody who has these, the 200 or whatever, that's going to be the entire network. Okay, so the question is, how many months are you going to have before the next one comes out and wrecks this thing completely? Okay, that's kind of where the degen bet is. In my opinion, for this price, is it a good degen bet? Not really. We'll talk about why here exactly. Okay, so pricing is out for this thing. It is going to ship out supposedly soon, like in the next week or so. Coastal has it at 11.4. T-Swift, who is one of the better baselines because he's always the cheapest, it's under 11. I want to say like 10.8, something like that. So we'll go by the $11,000 price tag, and looking at it like that, when we look at the overall profitability, which again, it's 110 bucks, 10 of that is Alephium, meaning $100 is Radiant. Okay. So what's going to be the issue here? Okay, it's not going to make this amount by the time you get it. Okay, fully understand that. For you guys who have been following Caspa and now Alephium, we're seeing this play out again. Okay, so hopefully you guys are on point. Let's do some easy math here. We know that this unit's going to be 3.2 terahash on the Radiant side, right? Again, I don't really care about the Alephium side. We're worried about the Radiant. So the issue here is the overall hash rate. Okay, currently did spike up because they're probably pre-mining on these units. We'll go by this hash rate just for easy math purposes. Okay, currently at 308 terahash. Only 100 units is going to double it where it's at currently. Okay, so we know that this batch is going to be at least 100. Coastal saying 100, T-Swift saying 200. Let's go with the best case scenario and say it's only 100. If it's 100 units, that's enough to double the current hash rate, which is going to what? It is going to reduce your yield in half. Okay, for these like ASICs where you're kind of betting on these like hype ASICs, focus on the yield. Don't look at that fiat profitability because that can swing wildly, as we just saw with Radiant, right? Their price just did a 2x. Essentially, as this was announced, right? It can retrace back, or it can do a 3x, 4x, 5x from here. Okay, so for future yield, yes, you want to take that in consideration. But for considering buying this ASIC, focus on the yield because that's where the value proposition is. Okay. So currently about $100 worth of Radiant is, give or take, easy math purposes, we're going to round it up to 100,000. It's about 94,000. We'll round it up to 100,000. We'll kind of give them the benefit of the doubt. So again, the hash rate is going to double. So you're going to get half of that. So your daily yield will be about 50,000 RXD, right? We're just doing easy math here. The issue there is this price tag, right? If you're yielding only 50,000 RXD, which does have the potential to be worth a lot, right? Obviously, if it's 50 bucks a day and it's does a 10x, you could multiply it. There's that argument, yes. Let's compare it though to where the real metric should be compared to, and it's how much RXD would you have if you just bought $11,000 worth right now. That's where it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, okay? Because currently, if you were to buy, in this case, we have it down to $10,479 worth, it would be a little bit over 10 million RXD, okay? So if we take those 10 million RXD, which again, debatable, because if you would have bought it yesterday, it would be damn near double, right? So we're going to give them the benefit of the doubt and go at this pump price, okay? So 10 million RXD, we're going to divide it by your daily yield. Again, best case scenario, only 100 units come out. You will need 200 days of mining to reach that amount. Is that realistic? Hell to the no. They're going to continue to, and especially if 200 units come out, okay, and they're only going to continue. They're going to try to ship these things out as fast as they can to take advantage of the market and being the first ones out, okay? So at this price point, to me, no, right? Maybe if it was $5,000, it'd be worth degenning into it, but it's just, there's too many risky variables here, okay? Even just aside from the quality of it, right? DragonBall, I don't have a whole lot of faith in the overall quality. You guys remember that damn wind miner? Wouldn't be surprised to see that same kind of quality here. But even if it's the best unit, it comes in, it's pristine, it's a tank, this thing lasts you a year, I just don't think it's a good buy at this point. I think 100% you're better off just buying the coin, especially if Radiant does retrace, because it did pump up and it is starting to go back down a bit. How much it goes down, to what extent, we don't know. But again, even basing it off this current pump price, I would definitely just be buying the coin, right? At this point, again, a 200-day ROI, which again is not realistic because that's only 100 units coming online. We know that there's going to be 200, 300 more other manufacturers, etc. You can make the argument though, if it was potentially the latest and greatest, if this was a Bitmain unit, potentially an Ice River unit where I had more confidence that, you know what, this is a high spec unit. I think even when the Ice River or Bitmain does come out, it's probably going to be fairly close in terms of efficiency. I personally don't see that as being the case. To me, this does appear to be potentially older chips. So for me, that part of the value isn't there either. And if it was something where you could potentially mine that amount in, let's say, 90 days, right? Again, that's not a very realistic ROI for ASIC mining. But again, in this particular case with these initially first ASICs, that is kind of the value prop. It's not the typical 2-year, 3-year ROI, all that nonsense. This is a different animal. You're paying this exaggerated price for that potential here, right? So again, your best case scenario being 200-day break even doesn't sound good, right? Because again, we know that this is not even realistic. Realistically, if 200 units come out, this just doubles, right? 400 days. No, not at all. Okay, so is this to say that, you know, no Radiant ASIC is going to be good? No, it's just this time, this prices, this potential efficiency, when it does seem like the future ones are going to wreck this thing. No, too much risk. Again, if it was lower priced at like 5,000 bucks, then sure, it could be worth it. But again, they're pricing it based off of $100 a day. We know this shit ain't going to be $100 a day by the time you get it. Okay, and even more so in this case, because again, Radiant is a tiny market cap. The emissions are extremely low. It's just not a fan. Okay, in this case, right? It's not to say that when other manufacturers come out that they're not going to be better. If you're a big supporter of Radiant and you want to decentralize the network, then sure, go for it. But in terms of risk to reward and making profits, a no-go, right? It's, even if I were somebody who is extremely bullish on Radiant, this would not be for me, right? It doesn't make sense for me, honestly. Okay, so to each their own. Yes, it's going to have extreme potential. Yes, hopefully it does work out. But again, for the price, it doesn't make sense. It just makes more sense to buy it, right? Even on the degen point, like arguably the AL1 would be even less risky, I guess, even though we know that one's probably going to get wrecked, just because at the end of the day, you have the argument that you have potentially the latest and greatest and what's going to be best for at least a while, right? The same argument can be made here, and they're trying to price it kind of accordingly. Okay, so doesn't make sense to me. What do you guys think? Do you guys think it makes sense? Are you guys looking at it? Again, it ain't looking good to me. Let me know what you guys think in the comments though, guys. What do you guys think of it? Would you guys buy morally, ethically? Is that something that would sway you? Let me know your overall thoughts, because I know there is a lot of thoughts and opinions here. Let me know your thoughts, but just from both perspectives, financially, profit-wise, no, not at this price, right? But again, let me know what you guys think. Please comment, like, and subscribe, guys. Thank you for watching, and I am out.